Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brie. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today we are going on a rant. Probably a rant rampage because, ooh, do I have a lot of feelings about my least favorite female characters in books. And today I'm going to share them with you. Maybe it's unpopular opinion. I don't really care. I'm just going to go at it. So, without further ado, let's talk about my top 5 least favorite female characters of books of all time. Coming in at number 5, while this character is in one of my favorite series, and it's one of my favorite fun series, definitely probably has some problems, and there are definitely tropes in the series that I don't always agree with. I still loved reading it. It was a lot of fun. It was a great time. However, the main character of this book drove me nuts. And that would be Scarlet from the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. Now, Scarlet is such an interesting protagonist because she is the first book, and then the second book follows her sister Tella, and then the third book follows both of them. And you would think that if I hated a main character a lot, that I wouldn't continue with the story, but it was compelling still. However, Scarlet is just very much like, she is an idealist and very optimistic, and because of that, she is that person who everyone thinks that because you're optimistic and, you know, idealistic, you're naive. And it drove me nuts. So, for the most part, Scarlet just makes a lot of decisions that are kind of selfish, and she doesn't really know what she's doing, so she throws herself into this entire adventure and disregards pretty much everyone else around her. She is supposed to be married for, you know, she's supposed to be married off in the beginning of the novel, and because she doesn't like that, she gets an invitation or steals an invitation to go to Caraval, and immediately upon arriving there falls in love with someone who she's still not even sure if she should trust or not. So because of that, there's just a lot of things that she does in this novel that drives me crazy, because it's like, you've never really experienced anything outside of your home before. You were kind of having a very toxic relationship with your father. He wasn't a very good person and he abused you and your sister. So it makes sense that, you know, the first person that shows her kindness, she throws herself out, but it's still not safe, and she doesn't use her head, and she's supposed to be the older sister, and I felt like her younger sister, Tella, was so much smarter and smoother than she was. So even though I enjoyed the book and I enjoyed the series, Scarlet drove me crazy more times than not because she just made really dumb decisions. Coming in at number 4 on this list is one of these characters I think people always have strong opinions on, and that would be Clary Fay from the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. City of Bone is the first one if you are unsure about the umbrella term, but Clary Fay is one of those characters that I also rolled my eyes at several times. The thing with Clary is you could just tell that Cassandra Clare, like, this was one of her first books that she wrote, and that she had a lot of influences, I believe some fanfic influences, as well as just like what she liked as a reader. And they all kind of went into Clary. Not that it's a bad thing, but Clary was just so perfect and it was irksome. She's another one, much like Scarlet, that would kind of make decisions just based on her own selfish motives and never thinking about anyone else, and sometimes repeat the same issues that she had in the past and had a hard time learning from them, it seemed. So when things would happen, I would just be like, Clary, we've been here already. Why are we doing this again? Clary also had that type of personality in young adult where she's just instantly good at things, and that irked me. And granted, it wasn't necessarily the character's fault, it was more of the author's fault, but because of that, it made Clary such a Mary Sue. She was like instantly a good warrior. She had this magic special power where she can create her own runes. She can communicate with angels. Like, she was just like that girl. And I think really the part that just bothered me so much with Clary is her relationship with Jace. They're one of my least favorite couples I've ever read, and they were so annoying on the page. And there's just that weird sibling slash friend thing that was happening. If you read the books, then you know what I mean. But there's just a lot of weirdness. But every time Clary and Jace were on the page together, I don't know if it's just because I read this book as an adult, because I read a lot of young adult books and I don't feel this way about all of them, but this particular series, I felt like I just wanted to like smash their heads together and be like, stop it. Just don't even be friends. Like, you guys are bad for each other. Like, they had like such a back and forth, like a toxic banter, in my opinion, where I'm like, I don't even understand why you guys like each other, because you act like you hate each other more times than not. So I think it sucked the soul out of me reading it. And that's why I just really have a rough time reading Clary. She's just not enjoyable. Coming in at number 3 on this list is another one who people have a lot of opinions about, and that is Tris Pryor from the Divergent series. Now, Divergent is not my favorite series, not even close to being in my top favorites. And honestly, if Divergent just stopped at Divergent, I might have actually liked it, because the premise was solid, just given the time frame and the whole dystopian era that we were seeing at that time. However, it continued, and I really, really hated Tris. She's another one, and I feel like, I hate using the term Mary Sue, but like Tris was like perfect. Like, she was divergent. She, you know, wanted to be everything. And as someone who as a kid and currently wants to be everything they possibly can be, I should have been able to relate to Tris, but I couldn't. And I don't know why. I just felt like her character was very stilted when you were reading her. Like, she had the makings of what you should be able to relate to, but you weren't able to. And instead, she again made kind of impulsive decisions without thinking things through, and that killed me, because again, even though as a teenager you should, that is kind of a core quality of teenagers. You make rash decisions, you don't know, you're not thinking about how they're going to act. However, when you put a heroine in a dystopian novel and they have to make changes, that should correlate with the teenage protagonist. But in this case, Tris was just thinking of things and not really considering what their implications were going to be, and just like steam piled through everything that was all good, I guess. Especially at the end there with her brother. It bothered me, that whole thing. I'm not going to go into that here, but I just felt like the way that the book series ended was actually a selfish act more than a selfless act. And we could talk about that in a whole nother video on a whole nother day, but I have a lot of reasons for that. It's just more so that it was more made to prove a point rather than to actually contribute to the story. I'm all for authors taking risks. I'm all for authors doing things you don't expect, but in that case, it fell flat for me. And because of it, everything leading up just kind of killed Tris for me because of how that all played out. She just annoyed me, in that it is what it is. Like, I just am not going to change my mind on Tris. So now we're down to my top 2, and boy, I mean, I can literally go on for ages about these 2, but I'm not. We're gonna keep it reined in. But at the number 2 spot, we have Selena Sardathian from Throne of Glass. I'm really shocked that Selena didn't make number 1, because I have a lot of feelings about her, but there's someone that I actually hate even more. So Selena is from Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and Selena is one of those characters that I have a hard time understanding her character arc, because while in some ways she grows, there are so many things that she does throughout the series that continuously show that she's the same selfish person that we started the series off with. Case in point, I do have to mention the novella series here, because as you're reading the series, it's a couple years in the future from when the novella prequels came out, even though the prequels obviously publication-wise came out later. So when you're reading the series and you go back to the prequels, you literally learn that she made decisions that cost people their lives, that essentially screwed over many people. And then you read the story later and you realize that she makes the same mistakes. It would be a lot different if you created a character where this happened in their past and this is the way they are now. But instead, she just keeps doing the same stuff over and over again. And again, she's just one of those perfect individuals. She is flawless, even though she's not even eating for weeks and she's emaciated. She's so strong, even though she hasn't been training in months because she's been locked in a prison. She has magic because, well, obviously we have to have magic. And we have to have the most powerful magic, even though we're not a full-blooded magical creature. Just so much of her irked me. And again, every time she made decisions, it never really helped other people. A lot of her decisions, I think, were just there to further the plot rather than actually contribute to a story. And most of her decisions, even though in theory I don't think some of them would have worked or would have made sense, they still somehow made the plot work. And that always aggravated me too, which is more of a development plotting issue than a character issue. But Selena still made decisions and I hated her for them. So that is kind of where I am at with Selena. I just think out of everyone, the only reason that I finished that series was because of the other characters there. If this series was just Selena's perspective, I definitely would have quit in book 2. I think I would have got through book 1. By book 2, I think I would have been annoyed with her to the end. And later, if you've read the series, then you know that there's kind of like different personalities that come out. I'll just say that to keep it vague. That's actually the character personality quirk that I hate even more when she takes on this new role. But I don't want to say that because of spoilers, but if you know, then you know. And the more that she embraced a different side of her and kind of brought on these new roles, the more I just thought, if I had to look up to you in this fantasy world, I would just be like, nope, where's the ship? I'm going to a different country. We're not staying here. So yeah, I can't deal with her and all of her poor decision making that somehow ends up being perfect in the end. And my number one least favorite / probably this is like the true hate. I hate this character beyond belief. And that would be Zoe Redbird from the House of Night series. Also the Marked series by PC and Kristen Cast. Where do I even begin with Zoe? Zoe is literally the most contradicting character I have ever read on a page. So much so that I tried to read this series twice and eventually quit both times. The second time I didn't even make it as far as an adult reading it because it was so poor and her character was so distasteful. Zoe absolutely cares only about herself. She tries to make her parents seem like they're total dicks, when in reality, they're really not that bad. Sure, there's some high opinions from her parents, but they don't do anything overtly negative to make her have such a distasteful reaction towards them, to the point where she just casts them off completely. Like, she changes her name. She never wants anything to do with her mom and stepdad ever again, and there's really no reason for it. Also, in the first couple pages of the series of the first book, she like slut shames her older sister, and again, there's no reason for it. So she just has this animosity that is unwarranted towards her family. And as we continue with the series, Zoe is extremely judgmental and does, like, she's a hypocrite. She does the same exact thing that she judges other people for, but it's okay for her. And ooh, that bothers me so much. The biggest thing is she slut shames every female character in this book aside from herself. When by book 2, she's already slept with, I think, 2 or 3 people. And keep in mind, this is a young adult series and she's 16. So there's just a lot. Not that I'm saying that having sex at a young age, to each their own. But for someone who's like saying how negative it is for other people in this series, she has a lot of opinions that are unwarranted. Also, Zoe is she's just a caricature where, like, she can do no wrong, but judges everyone else all the time for everything that they do. It's like, oh, well, she's so perfect, and yet everyone else, like, despite having pasts that, people can change, Zoe is not. She was born perfect, she's always perfect, and everyone else, no one can change. And it's that mentality that literally carries through the entire book series. Well, I guess up until book 7, I think that's where I ended the first time I tried to read it, and I think I got through book 3 the second time. So at least for those books, that's her personality, and it just makes me so frustrated. I hate hypocritical people in general, and I hate when, like, they try to make their hypocrisy seem like it's okay, especially with the slut shaming and the very hurtful, impactful statements that she makes with the LGBT and people of color in the book, and there's not many, so you get that tokenism there, but it's very negative. So yeah, Zoe can rot in hell. I did not like her. She is not a good role model for young people, and She's literally one of the biggest Mary Sues I've ever come across. Because again, we have someone who is like pretty and perfect and all the boys want her, and she's the most powerful and she can control all the elements, and yet is a terrible person. Like if she was in real life, I would never be able to be in a room with her because I would be like, you are awful. You're being mean to everyone. You should not voice your opinion because it's probably not correct or it's not based on any facts. And that's all. I hate her. She's the worst. That's my rant. All right, so those are all the female characters that I absolutely loathe with burning passion. Well, at least the top 3 I kind of loathe. The first 2 are a little bit iffy. I don't like them. But yeah, the top 2 by far are the worst characters I've ever read. Now, I will say that obviously all of these characters are from young adult books. And I do recognize that the adult books I read, I typically I understand them more. And I don't know if that's necessarily like a commentary on the young adult genre, because I do love reading young adult, but I find that most of the time if I'm going to hate a female character, it's going to be in a young adult book. And that's what it is. Obviously, there are other books that prove me wrong all the time, but these particular ones, not it for me. So let me know down below, what characters do you hate? And is there any on this list that you also resonate with? And if not, or, you know, if the opposite, if you think that you really love these characters, let me know down below why. I'm just interested to hear the opposition, of course. But anyway, that is it for this quick video on my rants. Stay tuned. Down the line, I'm going to have my conclusion to my least favorites and favorites with my least favorite male characters. But for now, that is it. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.